Do you have an ulcer? Are you wondering if there's a natural way to repair your ulcer aside from the more conventional methods with long-term prescription drugs? I'm here to tell you there is a natural way to repair the ulcer. I've seen lots of patients deal with ulcers for a long period of time, and when they follow the protocol that I'm about to show you, they're better within a matter of weeks, with relief oftentimes coming within just a few short days. So how do you get an ulcer? First, let's discuss what causes an ulcer. What causes an ulcer, the two main causes are H. pylori bacterial infection and NSAID use, long-term NSAID use. So when you look at those two things, we're thinking, all right, first, your microbiome is off in your gut, which would be the bacteria in your gut isn't what it should be if H. pylori is winning. How does that happen? Typically, we see that happen with antibiotic use. And usually multiple rounds of antibiotics will do this. So a lot of people will start an antibiotic for some kind of infection. It gets better, doesn't fully knock it out, and then maybe a couple of weeks later, a month later, they have to go on a stronger, longer round of antibiotics, and then whatever the initial infection was that the antibiotic took care of, hopefully it takes care of it by then. But what we see later on, maybe a month, 2 months down the road, is all these digestive issues start to occur. It could be lower GI, it could be upper GI. For the purposes of this, we're talking about the upper GI, we're talking about ulcer. Typically, what happens is all the bacteria gets wiped out from the antibiotics you took. The only one left is the really bad one, the tough guy who you can't kill, and it's the H. pylori one, and he starts feeding on your stomach lining. When you have other bacteria present in your gut, they keep him in check, he can't thrive and can't start eating away at the gut. So that's one reason we see it. The other one we see is NSAIDs, which we talked about, ibuprofen, acetaminophen. Those are only meant to be used for a short term. And most people are using those for some kind of pain, right? Typically musculoskeletal pain that isn't being resolved. So you're not treating the cause of your pain when you take NSAIDs, you're just masking it. But unfortunately, what happens is long-term use of NSAIDs is tied to the bleeding stomachs. It just pretty much eats away at your stomach lining. And NSAIDs aren't meant for long-term use. And I tell patients typically after a week or two, you got to start coming off that or you're going to start wearing out the stomach lining and develop an ulcer. And that is still, through the research, the number one cause for an ulcer. There's thoughts that I'm stressed out or spicy foods, and there's really no science to show any of that being the reason people get an ulcer. An ulcer is pretty avoidable if you think about it, because the two things that are majorly causing it typically are treatments that aren't being done properly in the first place. But let's get into how you would properly address this. First things first is you need to start incorporating the nutrients required to heal and detoxify your gut. When you're on fire with an ulcer, HiPep is one of the best things you can use. From MediHerb, we use HiPep. It's licorice, it's chamomile, which everyone knows is a calming, soothing herb, and it's licorice, it's deglycerineized licorice, so for those with high blood pressure, this is safe to take because it won't elevate the blood pressure because of the process of taking out the deglycerinization that they've done. This is safe if you have high blood pressure for those who would be concerned about that. If you don't have high blood pressure, then licorice is pretty much safe for everyone anyway. This is like medicine. It's going to calm and soothe your gut, the burn. It's just going to feel good shortly after you take it. It's like rubbing aloe on one of your sunburns. All right. The other thing is Gastrex, which is, I like Gastrex as like a broad indigestion support. What it does is it calms gastritis, which is inflammation of the gut, of the stomach, and spasming. So it's going to kind of calm it neurologically. It's going to heal, repair. It's also going to detox the gut. So as it goes through your gut, it's going to detox stuff. I like having Gastrex just in the house. You go out to eat, you eat something bad. Gastrex, it just sounds like what it is. It's Gastrex. Like if you're feeling off, you take some Gastrex. It helps a lot. For this purpose, we're using it to detox and to start calming the pain in the gut. Now you got to build the gut back up, and you got to rebuild up that mucosal lining that was eaten away in the stomach, right? So we're going to deal with the stomach first. First thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the fat-soluble vitamins required for that mucosal lining of the stomach to be built up. Chlorophyll complex, this particular chlorophyll complex has all of those in it. The other thing it has that someone who has an ulcer really needs is vitamin K, which is clotting, right? So if you're bleeding, you need vitamin K to clot that up, stop the bleed, right? And vitamin K isn't the most abundant nutrient. It's pretty tough to get enough of it in your diet when you're already in a situation where you're deficient and you're bleeding. So this is great. I like chlorophyll complex. It's like just a multi because it's so profound in nutrients. But in this situation, it really helps to rebuild and calm the gut. And then the last thing I recommend for people, which is essential, I think, as well, is the Okra Pepsin E3. Okra Pepsin is real If you've ever had okra, it gets real mucilaginous. It's slimy in some conditions. But that's good. That's what we need. We need to build up the mucosal lining of the stomach. What the okra pepsin does, it has allantoin in it, which is a very nutrient agent that will help repair tissue. But it also is going to debride and clean the gut lining, right? So chances are, if you've developed an ulcer, your stomach's been off for a while. Maybe the pH has been off, or the bacterial count has been off, or you've just been taking NSAIDs and you've eaten away at the lining that's there, and you've built up an inflammatory residue over your gut. When you build that inflammatory residue up over your gut, you're no longer absorbing the nutrients you need. And we just said we got to rebuild our stomach lining. So how can you rebuild the stomach lining if you don't have the nutrients required to do it? So the Okra Pepsin is going to clean your gut out, expose the villi that lay in your small intestine so you can actually pull the nutrients in and actually absorb the stuff we're taking to repair and absorb the things hopefully you're eating to repair. You can find all 4 of these supplements in the link below. You can also subscribe to the Massoud method and get more information on how to naturally be your best self. Thank you guys for checking it out. Be well.